But soon the link of soul with form grew soft. Flooded was the dim cave with slow, conscious light. The seed grew into a delicate, marvelous bud. The bud disclosed a great and heavenly bloom. At once she seemed to found a mightier race. Her nature dwelt in a strong, separate air, like a strange bird with large, rich-colored breast that sojourns on a secret, fruited bough, lost in the emerald glory of the woods, or flies above divine, unreachable tops.
Good morning. So we're reading in Book 4, and we're in Canto 1. So this is the book of birth and quest. After Aswapati's inner journey through the subtle planes of consciousness, he's ascended from the lower base of subtle matter up all the way to the borders of the supermind, and he encountered there the Divine Mother, implored her to descend onto earth, to heal, to transform its suffering, and she consented. And now in Book 4, we see the birth and the early childhood of Savitri. After 1 year, or during the year following Aswapati's encounter with the Divine Mother and her consent to descend, 1 year passes, and Sri Aurobindo takes us through 6 seasons of the year that quickly follow in succession, and he describes beautifully each of these seasons. And in the last of those, in the spring, Savitri is born, and we just heard the Divine Mother describing that birth. I'll read a little bit more of that. It's at the top of page 353. After describing the spring in vivid detail, Sri Aurobindo says, "In this high signal moment clay, a lamp was lit, a sacred image made. A mediating ray had touched the earth, bridging the gulf between man's mind and God's. Its brightness linked our transience to the unknown. A spirit of its celestial source aware, translating heaven into a human shape, descended into earth's imperfect mold, and wept not, fallen to mortality, but looked on all with large and tranquil eyes. One had returned from the transcendent plains, and bore anew the load of mortal breath, who had striven of old with our darkness and our pain. She took again her divine unfinished task, survivor of death and the eonic years. Once more, with her fathomless heart, she fronted time." So we see that this incarnation of the Divine Mother is not the first time she's descended, that she had come onto earth many times, working towards the development of consciousness on earth. And then we saw the development of this child, Savitri, still very small. And Sri Aurobindo keeps referring back to the spring as he describes her, giving this sense of this renewal of life here on earth that she is symbolizing, this new outbreak of life. So we've come to the bottom of page 356 on line 280. Third line from the bottom. Suresh, would you like to read? Yeah, page 356, 280.
Outlined in the sincerity of that ray, her springing childlike thoughts were quickly turned into luminous patterns of her soul's deep truth. And from her eyes she cast another look on all around her than man's ignorant view. All objects were to her shapes of living selves, and she received a message from her kin in each awakening touch of outward things. Each was a symbol's power, a vivid flash in the circuit of infinities half known. Nothing was alien or inanimate, nothing without its meaning or its call. For with a greater nature she was one. As from the soil spring glory of branch of flower, as from the animal's life rose thinking man, a new epoch appeared in her, a mind of life of rhythmic force, a body instinct with hidden divinity, prepare an image of the coming God, and when the slow rim of the expanding years and the rich murmurs swarm work of the days, hot honey packed her sense and filled her limbs, accomplishing the moon's work of her grace, self-guarded in the silence of her strength. Her solitary greatness was not less.
Thank you. Let's pause there. The description of Savitri's early childhood is remarkable in the sense that it also reminds us of the mother's early childhood, that she also was conscious from her early years. Something of the avatar, the nature of the avatar is described here. And it also describes something of the truth of our being also, a kind of ideal towards which we also can strive. And I'm thinking particularly of these lines here. All objects were to her shapes of living selves, and she perceived a message from her kin in each awakening touch of outward things. It suggests that all things, all objects were to her alive, as if living beings, expressions of living beings. And she perceived them as giving messages to her or being symbolic of deeper truths. And their contact with her was awakening her own consciousness, so that too we can look on our world with different eyes, in a sense, to see it alive with the indwelling divinity within each thing. Each was a symbol power, a vivid flash in the circuit of infinities half known. Nothing was alien or inanimate, nothing without its meaning or its call. Everything was alive and everything felt a part of her own being, not something separate. Extensions of herself. For with a greater nature she was one. And then there's some significant lines here expressing what Savitri represents in the development, in the evolution of the earth. As from the soil sprang glory of branch and flower, as from the animal's life rose thinking man, a new epiphany appeared in her, a mind of light, a life of rhythmic force, of body instinct, with hidden divinity, prepared an image of the coming God. And we see here reminds us of the mother of the ashram. This new divinity appearing in Savitri for the first time, a new consciousness, a mind of light, which Sri Aurobindo describes as intermediate to the supramental consciousness. The mind flooded with the supramental light, and flooding the life with rhythmic force, and even the body, instinct, with hidden divinity. Prepared an image of the coming God, in a sense, a forerunner of the divine man, the Superman. And then he has some beautiful lines describing, as Savitri continues her growth through her childhood years, when the slow rhyme of the expanding years and the rich murmurous swarm work of the days had honey-packed her sense and filled her limbs, as she grows in her consciousness. accomplishing the moon orb of her grace as it grows into its fullness like the full moon. Self-guarded in the silence of her strength, her solitary greatness was not less. So as she develops, she guards her consciousness and her power within her. It's not all thrown out. Her earlier childhood he described as just kind of a natural blossoming. But as she grows older, she becomes more solitary, more developing within, turned within. So let's continue reading. Would you continue, please? Would you continue? Yeah.
Nearer the Godhead to the surface pressed, a sun replacing childhood's nebula, sovereign in a blue and lonely sky. Upward it rose to grasp the human scene. The strong inhabitant turned to watch her field. Loveliest light assumed her spirit brow, and sweet and solemn grew her musing gaze. Celestial, human, deep, warm, slumbrous fires work in the long fringed glory of her eyes, like altar burnings in a mysterious shrine. Out of those crystal windows gleamed a wheel that brought a large significant to life. Holding her forehead's candid stainless space, behind the student arch a noble power of wisdom looked from light on transient things. A scout of victory in a vigil tower, her aspiration called high destiny down. A silent warrior paced in her city of strength, inviolate, guarding truth's diamond throne.
Thank you. We have a beautiful description of Savitri's appearance. As she grows up in her childhood, the divinity within her begins to come out more fully into the outer being into the outer consciousness. A sun replacing childhood's nebula. A nebula is an immense cloud of gas and dust in interstellar space. But this coalesces and becomes a sun, sovereign in a blue and lonely sky. Upward it rose to grasp the human scene. The strong inhabitant turned to watch her field. So we see her mental consciousness perhaps turning onto the world, looking on all around her with a deeper view. A lovelier light assumed her spirit brow. A sweet and solemn grew her musing gaze. Celestial human, deep, warm, slumberous fires woke in the long-fringed glory of her eyes, like altar burnings in a mysteried shrine. Incredible description of her eyes, her musing gaze, looking on all around her with this depth of perception. Celestial human, half divine, half human. Peaceful, quiet, tranquil fires were her eyes, like altar burnings in a mysteried shrine. And out of her eyes gleamed a will that brought a large significance to life. And then he describes her forehead, holding her forehead's candid, stainless space. Behind the student arch, a noble power of wisdom looked from light on transient things. Perhaps this is the chakra, forehead chakra, describing looking out with wisdom and power and will onto the world. A scout of victory in a vigil tower, looking for victory. Her aspiration called high destiny down. The concentrated power of her will calls the divine, calls the future down into herself. A silent warrior paced in her city of strength, inviolate, guarding truth's diamond throne. She protects that strength and power within her from the outside influences. Yeah, her life is rich with activity and work and all of that she is utilizing, had honey-packed her sense and filled her limbs. She was drawing in experience of life to develop. Okay, we'll continue. Would you like to?
A nectareous haloed moon, her passionate heart, loved all and spoke no word and made no sign, but kept her bosom's rapturous secrecy, a blissful, ardent mood and voiceless world. Proud, swift, and joyful ran the wave of life within her like a stream in paradise. Many high gods dwelt in one beautiful home, yet was her nature's orb a perfect whole, harmonious with a chant with many tones, immense and various like a universe. The body that held this greatness seemed almost an image made of heaven's transparent light. Its charm recalled things seen in visions hours. A golden bridge spanning a fairy flood, a moon-touched palm spring single by a lake, companion of the wide and glimmering peace, a murmur as of leaves in paradise, moving when feet of the immortals pass, a fiery halo over sleeping hills, a strange and starry head alone in night. End of Canto 1. Canto 2?
No, Gustav. It's not a, no, it's a noun. It's well, the verb comes in the next word, loved. He's first describing her passionate heart as a nectarous moon, and then her heart loved all, and spoke no word and made no sign. So she's holding this passion and delight within her heart center, not pouring it out. Nectarous is, well, nectar is a drink of the gods. Sweet, delicious, invigorating. Describes her life, proud, swift, and joyful, ran the wave of life within her like a stream in paradise. And the next lines again remind us of the mother. Many high gods dwelt in one beautiful home. They would speak of the mother sometimes in her facial expressions would appear differently depending on which god was kind of coming forward into her consciousness at the time. So her very physical appearance could change quite remarkably. Yet was her nature's orb a perfect whole. She embodied all these different aspects, these different gods, goddesses, but yet they all formed a complete whole, harmonious, like a chant with many tones, immense and various like a universe. And then her body, the body that held this greatness, seemed almost an image made of heaven's transparent light. I think I recall Shraddhavan once telling of sitting with the mother and seeing the mother and her body becoming almost transparent as she watched. Its charm recalled things seen in visions hours. A golden bridge spanning a fairy flood. So these are visions, images of her body. A moon-touched palm tree, single by a lake, companion of the wide and glimmering peace. Or a murmur as of leaves in paradise, moving when feet of the immortals pass. Or a fiery halo over sleeping hills, a strange and starry head alone in night, as if the moon over the hills in night, as if a strange and starry head alone in night. Yeah, something like that. I think also of the four aspects of the mother. The Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahasaraswati, Mahalakshmi, all taking form in her, sometimes expressing themselves through her, sometimes coming to the fore. There are these four photographs of the mother in which they say that each of these goddesses are more prominent in her consciousness at that moment and also in her appearance. That big photo in the meditation hall in the ashram is the Mahakali photo, expressing that aspect of her. So she embodied all of these different beings. They would come to her and lived within her greater being. And yet she harmonized all of that. It wasn't a disparate thing, but it was aspects of her full being. They were united also in a sense. But yes, we too all have different personalities and aspects of our being that assume prominence at different times within us. And we perhaps have to struggle to integrate these different aspects of our being, these different personalities. And that's part of our work that we have in our lifetime, to integrate these into a whole. Yeah, he starts with the body, but it's, I think, her in general. But beautiful imagery, beautiful poetry. These cantos of the growth of the Divine Mother are particularly beautiful poetry. So now we'll continue into Canto 2, and we'll read through the canto once and then return to it to comment. So, Helmut, would you like to begin?
The growth of the flame. A land of mountains and white sun-beat plains, and giant rivers pacing to vast seas. A field of creation and spiritual hush, silence swallowing life's acts into the deeps. Of thought's transcendent climb and heavenward leap. A brooding world of reverie and trance filled the mightiest works of God and man, where nature seemed to dream of the divine, and beauty and grace and grandeur at their home harbored the childhood of the incarnate flame. Over her watched millennial influences and the deep godheads of a grandiose past, looked on her and saw the future's godheads come, as if this magnet drew their powers unseen. Earth's brooding wisdom spoke to her still breast, mounting from mind's last peaks to mate with gods, making Earth's brilliant thoughts a springing board to dive into the cosmic vastnesses. The knowledge of the thinker and the seer saw the unseen and thought the unthinkable, opened the enormous doors of the unknown, rent man's horizons into infinity. A shoreless sweep.
Oh, I'm sorry, let's stop there. Oh, yes, we should stop. We'll continue.
A shoreless sweep was lent to the mortal's acts, and art and beauty sprang from the human depths, nature and soul wide in nobility, ethics the human keyed to imitate heaven. The harmony of a rich culture's tones refined the sense and magnified its reach to hear the unheard and glimpse the invisible, and taught the soul to soar beyond things known, inspiring life to greaten and break its bounds, aspiring to the immortal's unseen world. Leaving earth's safety, daring wings of mind bore her above the trodden fields of thought, crossing the mystic seas of the beyond, to live in eagle heights near to the sun. There wisdom sits on her eternal throne. All her life's turn led her to symbol doors, admitting to secret powers that were her kin. Adept of truth, initiate of bliss, a mystic acolyte trained in nature's school, aware of the marvel of created things. She laid the secrecies of her heart's deep muse upon the altar of the wonderful. Her hours were ritual in a timeless fane. Her acts became gestures of sacrifice.
Thank you. Next.
Invested with a rhythm of higher spheres, the word was used as a hieratic means for the release of the imprisoned spirit into communion with its comrade gods, or it helped to beat out new expressive forms of that which labors in the heart of life, some immemorial soul in men and things, seeker of the unknown and the unborn, carrying a light from the ineffable to rend the veil of the last mysteries. Intense philosophies pointed earth to heaven, or on foundations broad as cosmic space, upraised the earth mind to superhuman heights, overpassing lines that please the outward eyes, but hide the sight of that which lives within. Sculpture and painting concentrated sense upon an inner vision's motionless verge, reveal the figure of the invisible, unveiled all nature's meaning in a form, or caught into a body the divine.
Thank you.
The architecture of the infinite discovered here its inward musing shapes, captured into wide breadths of soaring stone. Music brought down celestial yearnings. Song held the merged heart absorbed in rapturous depths, linking the human with the cosmic cry. The world interpreting movements of the dance molded idea and mood to a rhythmic sway and posture. Crafts minute in subtle lines eternized a swift moment's memory, or showed in a carving's sweep, a cup's design, the underlying patterns of the unseen. Poems in largeness cast like moving worlds, and meters surging with the ocean's voice, translated by grandeurs locked in nature's heart, but thrown now into a crowded glory of speech. The beauty and sublimity of her forms, the passion of her moments and her moods, lifting the human word nearer to the gods.
Thank you.
Man's eyes could look into the inner realms. His scrutiny discovered numbers' law and organized the motions of the stars, mapped out the visible fashioning of the world, questioned the process of his thoughts, or made a theorized diagram of mind and life. These things she took in as her nature's food, but these alone could fill not her wide self. A human seeking, limited by its gains, to her they seemed the great and early steps, hazardous of a young discovering spirit, which saw not yet by its own native light. It tapped the universe with testing knocks, or stretched to find truth, mind's divining rod. There was a growing out to numberless sides, but not the widest seeing of the soul. Not yet the vast, direct, immediate touch, not yet the art and wisdom of the gods.
Thank you. Anandi?
A boundless knowledge greater than man's thought, a happiness too high for heart and sense. Locked in a world and yearning for release, she felt in her, waiting as yet for form. It asked for objects around which to grow, and nature strong to bear without recoil. The splendor of her native royalty, her greatness and her sweetness and her bliss, her might to possess and her vast power to love. Earth made a stepping stone to conquer heaven. The soul saw beyond heaven's limiting boundaries, met a great light from the unknowable, and dreamed for a transcendent action sphere. Aware of the universe self in all, she turned to living hearts and human forms. Her soul's reflections, complements, counterparts, the close outline portion of her being, divided from her by walls of body and mind, yet to her spirit bound by ties divine.
Thank you.
Overcoming invisible hedge and mass defense and the loneliness that separates soul from soul, she wished to make all one immense embrace, that she might house in it all living things, raised into a splendid point of seeing light, out of divisions dense inconscient cleft, and make them one with God and world and her. Only a few responded to her call. Still fewer felt the screen divinity and strove to mate its godhead with their own, approaching with some kinship to her heights. Uplifted towards luminous secrecies or conscious of some splendor hidden above, they leaped to find her in a moment's flash, glimpsing a light in a celestial vast, but could not keep the vision and the power, and fell back to life's dull, ordinary tone.
Thank you. Suresh?
A mind daring heavenly experiment, growing towards some largeness they felt near, testing the unknowns bound with eager touch. They still were burdened by the human grain. They could not keep up with her tireless step, too small and eager for her large-faced will, too narrow to look with the unborn, infinite gaze. The nature weary grew of things too great for even the close partners of her thoughts, who could have walked the nearest to her ray, worship the power and light they felt in her, but could not match the measure of her soul, a friend and yet too great, holy to know. She walked in their front towards of greater light, their leaders and queen over their hearts and souls, one close to their bosoms, yet divine and fair.
Thank you.
Admiring and amazed, they saw her stride, attempting with a godlike rush and leap heights for their human stature too remote, or with a slow, great, many-sided toil, pushing towards aims they hardly could conceive, yet forced to be the satellites of her sun. They moved unable to forego her light. Desiring, they clutched at her with outstretched hands, or followed, stumbling in the path she made. Or longing with their self of life and flesh, they clung to her heart's nourishment and support. The rest they could not see in visible light. Vaguely they bore her inner mightiness. Or bound by the senses and the longing heart, adoring with a turbid human love, they could not grasp the mighty spirit she was, or change by closeness to be even as she. Some felt her with their souls and thrilled with her, a greatness felt near yet beyond mind's grasp. To see her was a summon to adore. To be near her drew a high communion's force.
Thank you. Helmut?
So men worship a God too great to know, too high, too vast to wear a limiting shape. They feel a presence and obey a might, adore a love whose rapture invades their breasts. To a divine ardor quickening the heartbeats, a law they follow, greatening heart and life. Opened to the breath is a new diviner air. Open to man is a freer, happier world. He sees high steps climbing to self and light. Her divine paths, the soul's allegiance called. It saw, it felt, it knew the deity. Her will was puissant on their nature's acts. Her heart, inexhaustible sweetness lured their hearts. A being they loved, whose bounds exceeds theirs. Her measurement they could not reach, but bore her touch, answering with the flowers answer to the sun. They gave themselves to her and asked no more.
Thank you.
One greater than themselves, too wide for their ken, their minds could not understand, nor wholly know. Their lives replied to hers, moved at her words. They felt a Godhead and obeyed a call, answered to her lead, and did her work in the world. Their lives, their natures moved compelled by hers, as if the truths of their own larger selves put on an aspect of divinity, to exalt them to a pitch beyond their earth. There felt a larger future meet their walk. She held their hands, she chose for them their path. They were moved by her towards great unknown things. Faith drew them, and the joy to feel themselves hers. They lived in her, there saw the world with her eyes. Some turned to her against their nature's bent, divided between wonder and revolt, drawn by her charm and mastered by her will, possessed by her striving to possess. Impatient subjects, their tight longing hearts, hugging the bonds close of which they most complained, murmured at a joke they would have wept to lose, the splendid joke of her beauty and her love. Others pursued her with life's blind desires, and claiming all of her as their lonely own, hastened to engross her sweetness meant for all.
Thank you.
As earth claims light for its lone separate needs, demanding her for their soul jealous clasp, they asked from her movements bounded like their own, and to their smallness craved a like response. Or they repined that she surpassed their grip, and hoped to bind her close with longing's cords, or finding her touch desired too strong to bear, they blamed her for a tyranny they loved, shrank into themselves as from too bright a sun, yet hankered for the splendor they refused, angrily enamored of her sweet passionate ray. The weakness of their earth could hardly bear. They longed but cried out at the touch desired, inept to meet divinity so close, intolerant of a force they could not house. Some drawn unwillingly by her divine sway, endured it like a sweet but alien spell. Unable to mount to levels too sublime, they yearned to draw her down to their own earth, or forced to center round her their passionate lives. They hoped to bind to their hearts' human needs her glory and grace that had enslaved their souls.
Thank you.
But mid this world, these hearts that answered her call, none could stamp up her equal and her mate. In vain she stooped to equal them with her heights, too pure that air was for small souls to breathe. These comrade selves to raise to her own wide breaths, her heart desired and filled with her own power, that a diviner force might enter life, a breath of Godhead greater in human time. Although she leaned down to their littleness, covering their lives with her strong, passionate hands, and knew by sympathy their needs and wants, and dived in the shallow wave depths of their lives, and met and shared their heartbeats of grief and joy, and bent to heal their sorrow and their pride, lavishing the might that was hers on her lone peak, to lift to it their aspirations' cry. And though she drew their souls into her vast, and surrounded with the silence of her deeps, and held as the great mother holds her own, only a earthly surface bore their charge, and mixed its fire with their mortality. A greater self-lived soul unclaimed within.
Thank you.
Oftener in dumb nature's stir and peace, a nearness she could feel serenely won. The force in her drew earth's subhuman broods, and to her spirit's large and free delight, she joined the ardent-hued, magnificent lives of animal and bird and flower and tree. They answered to her with a simple heart. In man, a dim, disturbing somewhat lives. It knows but turns away from divine light, preferring the dark ignorance of the fall. Among the many who came drawn to her, nowhere she found her partner of high tasks, the comrade of her soul, her other self who was made with her, like God and nature, one. Some near approached, were touched, caught fire, then failed. Too great was her demand, too pure her force. Thus, lighting earth around her like a sun, yet in her inmost sky an orb aloof. A distance severed her from those most close. Puissant, apart her soul as the gods live.
Thank you.
As yet unlinked with a broad human sin, in a small circle of young, eager hearts, her being's early school and close domain. Appended on the business of earth life, she schooled her heavenly strain to bear its touch. Content in her little garden of the gods, as blooms a flower in an unvisited place. Earth nursed and conscious still the inhabitant flame, yet something deepless, stirred and dimly new. There was a movement and a passionate call, a rainbow dream, a hope of golden change. Some secret wind of expectation beat, a growing sense of something new and rare, and beautiful stole across the heart of time. Then a faint whisper of her touched the soil, breathed like a hidden need the soul divines. The eye of the great world discovered her, and wonder lifted up its bardic voice. A key to a light still keeping being's cave, the sun word of an ancient mystery's sense. Her name ran murmuring on the lips of men, exalted and sweet like an inspired verse, struck from the epic lyre of rumor's winds, or sung like a chant and thought by the poet's flame.
Thank you.
Which line? Okay, okay. Admired, unsought, but like a sacred symbol was that code. Admired, unsought, intangible to the grasp. Her beauty and flaming strength were seen afar, like lightning playing with the fallen day, a glory unapproachably divine. No equal heart came close to join her heart. No transient early love assailed her calm. No hero passion had the strength to seize. No eyes demanded her replying eyes. A power within her awed the imperfect flesh. The self-protecting genius in our clay divined the goddess in the woman's shape, and drew back from a touch beyond its kind, the earth nature bound in senses life narrow make. The hearts of men are amorous of clay kin, and bear no spirits lone and high, who bring fire intimations from the deathless plains, too vast for souls not born to mate with heaven. Whoever is too great must lonely live. Adored he walks in mighty solitude. Vain is his labor to create his kind. His only comrade is the strength within. Thus was it for a while with Savitri. All worshipped marvelingly, none dared to claim. Her mind set high, pouring its golden beams. Her heart was a crowded temple of delight. A single lamp lit in perfection's house, a bright pure image in a priestless shrine. Midst those encircling lives, her spirit dwelt, apart in herself until her hour of fate.
Thank you. So we can go back to the beginning of the canto. And Suresh?
The growth of the flame, a land of mountains and wide sunbeat plains, and giant rivers passing to vast seas, a field of creation and spiritual hush, silent, swallowing life's acts into the deeps of thoughts, transcendent, climb and heavenward leap, a brooding whole of rivers and trance, filled with the mightiest works of God and man, where nature seemed a dream of the divine, and beauty and grace and grandeur had their home, harbored the childhood of the incarnate flame. Over her watched millennial influence, and the deep goddess of a grandiose past looked on her and saw the future's goddess come, as if this magnet drew the powers unseen. Earth's brooding wisdom spoke to her still breast. Mountain from minds lost peaks to mate with gods, making Earth's brilliant thought a springing board to dive into the cosmic vastness, to knowledge of the thinker and the seer, saw the unseen and thought the unthinkable, opened the enormous door of the unknown, rent man's horizons into infinity.
Thank you. We have here described the palace, the countryside, the place where Savitri grows up. Somewhere in North India, a land of mountains and wide sun-beat plains and giant rivers. And we see that It's kind of a pinnacle, a highlight of human civilization here. It's ancient India with the philosophy and culture and sages and saints of the Vedic times. So it's in this setting that Savitri grows up. Over her watched millennial influences and the deep godheads of a grandiose past looked on her and saw the future's godheads to come, as if this magnet drew their powers unseen. It's as if she's calling these influences, this knowledge of the past, bringing it down into herself to take it to the next step. Earth's brooding wisdom spoke to her still breast, mounting from mind's last peaks to mate with the gods, making Earth's brilliant thoughts a springing board, like a diving board at a pool, to dive into the cosmic vastnesses. The knowledge of the thinker and the seer saw the unseen and thought the unthinkable, opened the enormous doors of the unknown, rent man's horizons into infinity. We'll read one more.
A shoreless sweep was lent to the mortal's axe, and art and beauty sprang from the human depths. Nature and soul vied in nobility. Ethics, the human keyed to intimate heaven, the harmony of a rich culture's tones, refined the sense and magnified its reach, to hear the unheard and glimpse the invisible, and taught the soul to soar beyond things known, inspiring life to greaten and break its bounds, aspiring to the immortal's unseen world. Leaving earth's safety, daring wings of mind bore her above the trodden fields of thought, crossing the mystic seas of the beyond to live on eagle heights near to the sun. There wisdom sits on her eternal throne. All her life's turns led to symbols' doors, admitting to secret powers that were her kin, adept of truth, initiate of bliss, a mystic acolyte trained to nature's school, aware of the marvel of created things, she laid the secrecies of her heart's deep muse upon the altar of the wonderful. Her hours were a ritual in a timeless vein. Her acts became gestures of sacrifice.
Thank you. This is the beginning of a longer description of the culture of the time in which she is growing up. So we see some of that here. First he says, a shoreless sweep was lent to the mortal's axe. It's as if all the activities of life are imbued with a deeper significance, linking them with the divine. And art and beauty sprang from the human depths. Nature and soul vied in nobility. Vied is striving in competition. So it's both the soul within and the nature without are kind of competing in their climb towards the divine. So also nature here is aspiring, trying to embody that divinity in its forms. So we see ethics. Ethics, the human, keyed to imitate heaven. It's an unusual construction, but it suggests that ethics are kind of a human attempt to imitate divinity, to guide the activities of life, our behavior. The harmony of a rich culture's tones refined the sense and magnified its reach, to hear the unheard and glimpse the invisible, and taught the soul to soar beyond things known, inspiring life to greaten and break its bounds. We see the significance and really the deeper purpose of human culture, to refine the being, to refine the senses, so that they may embrace the divine, aspiring to the immortal's. And then a little description, I think, of the beginning of the development of thought, perhaps implied the philosophy, spiritual philosophy, leaving earth's safety, daring wings of mind, bore her above the trodden fields of thought, crossing the mystic seas of the beyond to live on eagle heights near to the sun. We can imagine also the sages that were there around enlightening the people. Later we'll have Narad, the heavenly sage, who comes and enlightens, who is apparently a frequent visitor to the palace. There, wisdom sits on her eternal throne. Well, in the construction of the sentence, he speaks of the daring wings of mind, as if that could be the subject. When we read it, though, we think of Savitri, I think, also. I don't know. So she's learning, probably from these sages around her. She was an adept of truth, initiate of bliss, a mystic acolyte trained in nature's school. An acolyte is an assistant or novice, someone who's learning beside someone else. But trained in nature's school, so I think also she's, and we see later, learns from the nature around him and begins to commune with the inner spirits of the forests, and aware of the marvel of created things, she laid the secrecies of her heart's deep muse upon the altar of the wonderful. Her hours were a ritual in a timeless fane. A fane is a temple or sanctuary. Her acts became gestures of sacrifice. It suggests she's also learning from the sages around, I think. So we will stop there for today.
Facing the vast sea, a field of creation and spiritual hush, silence swallowing life's acts into the deeps of thoughts transcendent climb and heavenward leap. A brooding world of reverie and thought, filled with the mightiest works of God and man, where nature seemed a dream of the divine, and beauty and grace and grandeur had their home. Harbored the childhood of the incarnate flame.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.